Thank you, thank you. Thank you. Please hold your applause. We've never done this before, and you can't get up to leave in the middle of it, as he just said. Well, without further ado, welcome to this, the first installment of our brand new OT Talks program, shot live here in our brand new Black Box Theater. Now, by this point, many of you are probably wondering, what exactly is an OT Talk? What are they going to be talking about? Well, I hope to answer those two questions and perhaps a couple more about myself as the night goes on. OT Talks essentially serves a dual purpose. The first, as I said, is to showcase this beautiful new Black Box Theater. The Black Box was an idea that I first heard about when the mysterious word referendum was first being kicked around my freshman year, 2014, 2015. At that time, nobody really knew exactly what it was going to entail, but we all had very high hopes, and needless to say, everything that we got certainly fulfilled those wishes. We got beautiful additions to the auditorium, a brand new band room, a brand new dance studio, a fitness center over that way that I don't really frequent very often, being that I spend about 23 out of 24 hours a day in this wing, and this beautiful Black Box Theater. Second reason, of course, we are hosting this program, we are so glad that you could join us here for that reason tonight, is to bring together a couple rather diverse groups of people that Ocean Township encompasses. The first are, of course, the broadcast media students who are operating this extensive 8-camera shoot. How about a round of applause for them? Round of applause. The second, of course, another group of students, people like myself who are involved in the arts department, or anyone in visual and performing arts, athletes, academics, anybody to come and give an idea as to what their experience with Ocean Township has been. The third is our faculty, who each and every day bestow upon us their little nuggets of wisdom that we can then take home and incorporate into our lives. Tonight, represented by Mr. Muro, Mr. Ippolito, and Mr. Zupko. Round of applause, sure. The fourth are the alumni. Some are in the audience tonight. Others, like Dr. Tom Means, have gone on to do great things with the experiences that they have had here in Ocean Township, and so we honor them and invite them back to share their wisdom. And the fifth and final group is that which I am addressing right now. You wonderful people who decided to come out and support this new fledgling project and support the visual and performing arts in Ocean Township. I think that's about the greatest thing that we have in this town, is a supportive community that is willing to come out and support so many different ventures, shall we say, that we are taking. So who am I? Who is this remarkably handsome young man who is addressing the audience, giving the first of these OT Talks? Did he match his outfit to the color scheme? Has he been nominated for 3 Basie Awards? The answer to all these questions is yes, of course, but that is not the reason that I am in front of you here tonight. I don't mean this from a point of vanity or anything like that, but I like to consider myself traditional Ocean Township stock. I was born and raised here since I was 0, and it seems a fitting conclusion on my 18th birthday today to address a crowd of the people who have sculpted me into the person that I am today. My story begins longer ago than 18 years. Long time ago, in a faraway place, for all intents and purposes, 40 years, at Dow Avenue Elementary School, there were 2 bright-eyed, bushy-tailed youngsters by the names of Roxanne and Brad. And these, as I say, were 2 youngsters who were filled with all of the excitement that America has to offer, an eagerness for learning, an eagerness to go out and see what the world had to offer them. And so naturally, one day, sitting in Mrs. Hempstead's 3rd grade class, Roxanne was simply so excited by the question that she was about to ask that she was simply bounding out of her seat, raising her hand high as she possibly could, and it got to be too much for her. So she got up from her seat, ran to the front of the classroom, looked Mrs. Hempstead right in the eyes, and vomited all over the front row of the classroom, which coincidentally, Brad Andrus was sitting in, as things were organized alphabetically. Thanks, Mom. Now, I won't tell you that it was love at first sight. It certainly was not. But needless to say, 40 years later, out I came. Who knew that's where babies came from? So they brought me up the same way that they had been brought up in Ocean Township, full of that eagerness and that excitement to go out and chase whatever American dream that I had decided to chase. That's the beautiful thing about this country. You can be a ball player, you can be the president, you can be a movie star, and thank God for those last two, because God knows that the first one was not going to work out. I'm sorry, Dad, but I'm not trying out for the Mets anytime soon. So I decided that I had to pick one of the other two and run with it. Naturally, I picked the presidency. From the time I was this high off the ground, people had told me that I had a presidential name, Jack Howard Andrus. I guess there is some strength in that, but I didn't really know what it meant at the time. In any case, I threw myself into social studies, civics, politics, things like that. To this day, books full of presidential trivia adorn the bookshelves in my bedroom. I could tell you everything from what kind of pet John Quincy Adams had, it was an alligator, to how often he liked to skinny dip in the Potomac River, which was any morning. And if that doesn't sound like an attractive gig to a 4-year-old kid, I don't know what does. So naturally, I wanted to go and pursue that. I was a star pupil in every one of my social studies classes, all up through elementary school. I would even tell the teachers things that they wouldn't know. But as you transition into different schools, into different phases of your life, needless to say, you find different interests, different things to occupy your time with. And the first real new activity that I decided to pick up was music. When the 5th grade band, led by Mr. McAloon, came to give their presentation to the 4th graders at Ocean Township Elementary School, I was immediately enamored, and I knew that that was something that I wanted to be a part of. I decided that I was going to play the alto saxophone, and as soon as I got my hands on the instrument, I put it right back down, because I thought it was too heavy. And I figured, hey, I like SpongeBob, I like Squidward, why don't I pick up the clarinet? Now, here I am, 7 years later, continuing with the instrument. Now, this is the introduction of that whole movie star portion of that dual American dream that I mentioned. Sure, music and movies aren't necessarily the first two things you would put together, but it was the first time that I really got involved in creating art rather than just consuming it. And I fell in love. I would take home that little red "Now Go Home and Practice" book every day, and I would practice and practice. I knew every note in there, and I knew every note of those same 9 songs that he's been performing for the entire time that he's been conducting that band. I fell in love. I had the bug, and that was something that continued all the way up through the end of middle school. I stayed in band, I kept with it, and I kept practicing. Of course, there were the academic concerns too. I kept with the civics, I kept with the politics, I kept with history. And that was something that I loved as well. But it seemed increasingly that there was something being left out by focusing just on that one track. My sister Eliza, actually, as we were getting interviewed before we came out tonight, I cited her as one of my biggest inspirations because she was the first member of my family that I really looked up and saw was having a great time performing. So I said, hell, why can't I do that too? It looks like fun. So right then and there, I resolved that I was going to audition for the musical, The Little Mermaid, my 8th grade year. I picked out a monologue, I picked out a song, and I got cold feet. Couldn't bring myself to do it. So instead, I sat behind a spotlight for every single one of those rehearsals and for every single one of those performances. I would sit there and I would jot down notes. Okay, that's what color she wants there. That's when the light goes on that one. That's how I would have delivered that line. That's how I would have done that dance step. I embellish, but it really did seem like I would have a better time and be better suited to be in front of the spotlight rather than behind it. And again, this is not from a point of vanity. It's not because I really thought I could be doing that better. It's because I thought it looked like fun. And I was having such a great time in the arts department already that I knew that it was something I wanted to try. Well, I wasn't going to let that regret stay with me. So I resolved that I was going to audition for the first show I had an opportunity to audition for in high school. Ironically, the title of that show was Black Box Theater. White set pieces, black set, and in the auditorium, which has so recently been renovated, though I still keep it near and dear to my heart as it was the first time I walked in there to audition for Mrs. Worthwine and Miss Hanley. I had my monologue ready from the producers, I had Beyond the Sea ready by Bobby Darin with a karaoke track, and I was set. When that cast list went up, I was thrilled to see that I would be playing Happy Loman in an excerpt from Death of a Salesman, alongside 3 seniors who, to me, as a freshman, were the pinnacle of fame, the highest that you could possibly achieve. And I loved everything about the process. I loved the paper script that was copied out of one of those Everbind books they keep in the English workroom. I loved the highlights, I loved the notes, I loved pacing back and forth on stage, getting the blocking, and when that spotlight first hit me, when I first stepped in front of it rather than behind it, I knew that that was where I belonged. And that's something that I kept with me and decided that I was going to continue with at least all throughout high school. When the time came to audition for the Addams Family, I jumped at the chance. I wanted Gomez desperately, but needless to say, it went to one of those famed seniors that we were all looking up to. But that didn't crush me at all. That was the perfect incorporation of this drama that I had come to love during Black Box Theater and the music that I had come to love during middle school. I loved the singing, the dancing, the kitsch and the camp of the theater, and I knew that I had to continue with it. So I did. Every show that I possibly could have been in during my time at Ocean Township High School, I went out and I auditioned for. Brighton Beach Memoirs, Pippin, Almost Maine, Anything Goes, Alice in Wonderland, and now here we are rehearsing for Bye Bye Birdie. It seems a fitting culmination to my career in the performing arts here. Of course, most people don't think of high school exclusively as a place where you are in plays and musicals, although that is how I see it at this point. Many people view it in an academic light. So, of course, I also viewed it for a time in an academic light. I filled my schedule right from the beginning with the most challenging courses that I could possibly take. AP Euro, one of the hardest APs that you could possibly take right at the beginning of my freshman year, crammed into my schedule. And then AP US History, AP Economics, AP Government and Politics, and that brings us to where we are now. And if there's anything that those 4 classes taught me, it's not that Henry Clay was the architect of the Missouri Compromise, or that Lyndon Johnson was the titan of the Senate who could wheel and deal with the best of them. It was about that in my place on the world stage, I was no longer convinced that the best I could possibly do was in politics. One of my American dreams was finally starting to win out, and it was that of the movie star over the president. And that's where I am today. So this isn't necessarily just a where have I been, where am I going? It's more of a coming out story, telling you that I don't want to go into politics anymore. Or at least I don't think that that's where I could make my biggest difference. Because you can turn on the news every day and see that politics isn't what it used to be when Henry Clay was making compromises or when Lyndon Johnson was wheeling and dealing. It's not sexy. It's not like House of Cards, and it's much less like The West Wing. It's not light and bright like that. And it's about ideologies rather than ideas. And believe me, this isn't just some cranky liberal getting uppity about who the president is now. It's both sides of the aisle. It's not necessarily something that I can subscribe to anymore. So where does that leave me? Well, in 30 years, I don't hope to be standing here giving a stump speech, trying to earn your votes. I hope to be standing here looking back at my past 30 years, looking ahead at my next 30, at all the creative projects that I hope to pursue, the stages that I hope to sing on, and the staff paper that I hope to write on. Because if you have an idea that you're dying to try, it's most certainly wrong to die without trying it. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what Ocean Township has taught me. Thank you.